A lot of equestrians utilize horse treats as a way to bond with their horse and as a training aid. But did you know it can actually cause a lot of health concerns and cause pushy behavior if used incorrectly? So today in this breakdown here at Adri with our horse, we are going to break down when you should use treats, how frequent, safe practices, and the pros and cons, and how to give treats safely without creating a monster. Let's get into it. The pros of giving horse treats. It is a great tool for positive reinforcement, meaning that when the correct action or behavior is displayed, you reward by adding something favorable. We're adding treats. Treats help reinforce wanted behaviors. For example, if you say back up and your horse backs up promptly, you can reward with a treat, and that reinforces to your horse that that was the correct response. Treats can also help motivate nervous or young horses. Sometimes when they're just fresh into this world, everything's still scary to them, or if they've had a troubled past, certain stimuli can make them pretty nervous still. So reinforcing with something favorable, something pleasurable, like a nice tasty treat, whatever's happening is not a big deal. My one horse that I've got, she used to be pretty scared of tractors, but every time we went past the tractor that was not on at the moment, if she would touch the tractor with her nose and sniff it, I would give her a treat. I would say, "Good girl," and pet her. And that helped to reinforce that tractors are not anything to be afraid of. And then eventually we escalated this treat training to when the tractor was on, and then finally when it was on and actually in motion. Just walking past it without getting nervous, I would give her a treat for her just walking past a tractor. So she formed a positive association between the tractor and treats. This helps to build confidence during new tasks. It's also great for bonding and relationship building. For example, every single time I go and grab my horse from the pasture, she sees me coming and walks up to me almost every single time. She'll sometimes nicker to me, sometimes she'll trot on over to me. She seems to really like getting captured from the pasture. I think in part because she's getting out of the pasture. I always be sure that I give her a treat when I retrieve her from the pasture so that she associates me with a nice tasty treat. It can also help a horse warm up to new people or new environments. For example, when I first met my horse, she was very, very skittish and pretty afraid of people overall. And I just stood in the pasture and I had some nice tasty treats. They were like little muffins. I think they're German muffins with mints in them, so they smell really nice too. So I would just stand out there in the pasture with her and I would just have some in my hand and not make eye contact with her and extend them out. And of course, she's a horse, so she's curious. They have a great sense of smell. So she was interested in these treats. And I let her approach me. And she took the treat and realized that that was it. That was the entire interaction. I wasn't expecting anything from her. There's no task to ambush her with. Literally, the reward was her approaching me. And little by little, this turned into me being able to halter her, brush her, pick up her hooves, and eventually ride her. So it helped to build a positive association between myself and what I expect of her. There's also been instances where I wanted to ride my horse outside of where I normally ride her, and she was kind of nervous because there's a lot of scary horse trailers. There's a lot of motorcycles that go up and down this road. But I wanted to go trail riding back there and get her used to that area. So I ended up just bringing her back there, kind of like with the tractor. Every time she went past a horse trailer or went past a new part of the environment, I would give her a treat so that she associated going in this unfamiliar space with treats. And then little by little, she learned that I would let her eat grass in this new area. I would give her treats. I would scratch her. I would pet her, and there was no expectations of just to simply walk through this new environment. Treats can also be great for medical training. For example, it can encourage cooperation for things like injections, oral medications, haltering, bridling, picking up their feet. Really, an innumerable amount of tasks you can get your horse to do by treating them. And this is actually almost entirely how I taught my horse, Sersha, to be accepting of grooming, picking up her feet, walking anywhere with me, letting her put a bridle on her, standing still for the mounting block, letting me tighten up the girth. As you can imagine, I did have to switch to basically no sugar and very low starch treats so that she didn't get fat. They're like little training treats. They taste good, but they don't have many calories and they're pretty low in sugar and starches. But I had to use these treats all the time to get her to learn how to do every little thing, including medicinal interactions. So she's luckily very, very good with shots and injections and blood draws. But for oral medications, she wasn't super accepting of getting dewormer, even if it's apple flavored dewormer. She would see the syringe and kind of like throw up her head really high. And I think she definitely knew what was going on. So I took an empty dewormer syringe. I had saved one because I had intended to try this trick, and I filled it with applesauce. And horses are very curious, and like I said, they have a great sense of smell. So she was all about this syringe with the applesauce in it. So I just was giving her the dewormer, and she was licking it, loving it. And then I had the secondary syringe, which had the actual dewormer. I put that in her mouth really quickly, but then I very quickly, I dropped it on the ground and I gave her some more applesauce. So now I can deworm her. She's pretty smart. She does try to get a good smell of it to see, is this applesauce or is this dewormer? But I always try to use apple flavored dewormer to kind of mask the difference a little bit. But she's pretty good about it. And that's because I use treats. That's another thing. Treats don't have to be commercial treats. It can be applesauce, peppermints, little bits of grass, like anything that they enjoy to eat when given in small amounts, when given in moderation, can be really beneficial. How I first got a halter onto her was I would hold up the halter and a treat in my hand, and she would have to put her nose into the little nose band to get to the treat. And I'd take the halter away and say, "Good girl, you did it. That was great." And so she'd see the halter and be like, "Oh, it's a treat." Worth noting that giving them treats this consistently really only happens in the beginning when you're first teaching them something new. As long as you coincide giving the treat with a verbal reinforcement, like "good girl," you'll find that you don't actually need to give them the treat every time. Like at first you do, but pretty soon after they get used to it, you can just say "good girl," and they make the connection that good and treat kind of mean the same thing. Like that was the correct response. Treats have just been so fundamental in my training and building my relationship and my bond with my horse. Treats are great for enrichment. It adds a variety to their routine, variety to their diet, and it engages their brain and natural foraging instincts. You can buy little toy tumblers where you fill them with treats, like a ball with some holes in it, and they have to knock the ball around to get the treats out. And that's great for stimulating them and getting their brain thinking, solving problems. And if your horse ever has to be on stall rest or box rest, they're going to be in a stall for an extended period of time, it can be a great way to add some enrichment while they're stuck in the stall. If it's a medical purpose, medical reason, inclement weather reason, having little toys that you can put treats or bits of carrot and hay into, just so that it's some enrichment for them. Some people are under the incorrect assumption that horses are not intelligent animals, but they really are. Just like if you had a border collie, you wouldn't just expect it to be happy in a crate all day. You would want to provide it with toys and time away from the crate, time outside, interactions, that kind of thing. Treats are great for this. If your horse is picky or recovering from some sort of injury, Sometimes they can be a little reluctant to eat. Treats are a great way to pique their appetite. Sometimes, if they're not willing to eat, if you give them something nice and tasty, it'll spark their appetite. So, that being said, there are cons to giving horses treats as well. I know. It is very sad, but we got to talk about both sides. So, it can cause pushy and disrespectful behavior. Some horses do something called mugging, and that's when they dig in your pockets. They might even bite at your clothing or your bag trying to find treats. This is not fantastic behavior, as you can imagine. You don't want horses to be knocking your personal items over. You could have something very important or something even like toxic to the horse in your personal assets and getting in your personal space and bubble. Horses are usually around 1,000 pounds, if not more. And it's really important that they respect your space and they stay out of your bubble. And that includes your bags and your pockets, your jackets, things like that. It's tempting at first because, it's very cute looking behavior. It's kind of funny to see your horse picking up your bag and flinging it around. I'm guilty of this. I have laughed at this behavior in the past, being amazed at how their mouth is basically like another hand. But it's really bad behavior because it can be a gateway to other behaviors like nudging you with their head, and that can knock you down. Or if they actually do nip, not to be aggressive, but if you have treats in your pockets, they can nip your leg or they could tear a hole in your pants. Not good if you give your horse treats. They're more likely to engage in these sort of behaviors. Crowding the handler, they can accidentally step on you. My horse accidentally stepped on me one day. I wasn't wearing proper footwear. My bad. When you're around horses, you should always wear protective foot. But in this particular instance, I wasn't. I think I was just wearing like regular sneakers. I was like, I'll just grab her from the field real quick and brush her. And she stepped on me, and I actually fractured one of my toes this way. If a horse steps on you, you're supposed to try to push the horse off of you because you can get an injury if you just yank your foot out from under the horse, which is what my instinct was, to immediately yank it, but I ended up doing some real damage to my foot doing that. Giving treats can also cause food anxiety. Some horses, they can become frantic around food rewards. I don't know if they're just anticipating the treat so much that they become a little hot in the moment, which can be dangerous. It can also cause conflict between horses in group settings. So I do have firsthand experience with this. So my horse Sersha is the youngest in her pasture. She's only 8 years old, and I got her as a 4-year-old. So pretty much every single herd she's been in, she's been the baby of the herd. So I would give her a treat, and then the other horses, they were being all cute and friendly, and I wanted to give them a treat as well as they're approaching me. But then was like, what the heck, Mom? These treats are mine. And she would actually like pin her ears back and try to nip at whatever horse it was. So I had to stop giving treats to the other horses, and I no longer give Sersha treats when she's in my space. I specifically get her to back up out of my space before I give her a treat. We've reinforced this behavior so well. Every time I put her in the pasture, I take her halter off. I want to give her like a little reward to let her know that she did a good job that day. Even if it was a rough ride or rough training session, any effort from her is to be rewarded because at the end of the day, horses don't owe us anything. So I like to give her a little treat, and she knows that when I take that halter off, she immediately backs up. She does not even need me to say it anymore. She knows. She needs to back up out of my space first. Giving treats to horses can also reinforce the wrong behavior, so you have to be really careful about timing. For instance, if your horse is mugging you for treats or nipping you at your pockets and you take out a treat and give it to them, like, oh, you're being cute. You're like trying to find these treats here. What that's telling the horse is that nudging gets them what they want. And you're reinforcing that behavior. And you can't really blame them for crowding you after that because you're literally telling them that, yes, this is what you do. You want this treat, you just come right on in here and just push me around and I'll give you this treat because you're a cute horse. And a lot of times it takes for the handler to get hurt before this behavior is stopped. So if you're one of those people out there who allows their horse to nudge them and you're like, oh, it's so cute, just be super, super careful because one day this could cause a serious injury. So I would urge you to dissuade them from nudging you, get them to back up out of your space before giving them a treat. Some horses also dance around, prance, paw to get treats. Because from a human standpoint, a lot of these behaviors are cute. Oh, my horse is like putting their little hoof up in their leg, or they're like dancing. It's so cute. But again, this is dangerous behavior. They could step on you, or if they're really needing to be still for something, let's say a farrier visit or the vet's out and they need the horse to be still, they're like, oh, I feel like asking for a treat, and they start prancing around. That is so annoying to veterinary professionals and to farriers and to anybody handling your horse if your horse will not stand still. So it's a slippery slope giving them treats. You have to really be careful if you're going to do it. Make sure you know what you're doing. I would suggest reading some books, watch some videos online. Timing is absolutely everything when reinforcing behavior. The treat has to be given almost immediately after the correct response has been performed. If you want to teach your horse that ho means stop, the second your horse stops at ho or slows down a little bit, you give with the reins, and that way they know, like, okay, that's a reward in and of itself. Releasing the reins, and have the little treat in a pouch around your waist or in your pocket, and just have it ready so that as soon as they stop, you can give them the tiny little treat. That way they know that this is what caused me to get a treat. Because if you say, ho, your horse stops, and you're fumbling around trying to get the treat, and your horse puts its head down and scratches its legs, for example, and then it puts its head up and you give it a treat. That horse is probably going to think that what got it the treat is not it stopping, but it pulling its head down and scratching at its leg. Horses are so great at connecting the dots. And that's why it can be such a problem to give horses treats by hand. So if you're going to do it, make sure you're timing it exactly right. Obviously, when you give your horse treats, there are health risks. High sugar treats are abundant, and this can be devastating for horses with insulin resistance, metabolic issues, horses that have Cushing's, horses that are prone to laminitis. For example, if you have carrots or apples and your horse is older, doesn't have the teeth they used to, a lot of times when horses get older, they have to have teeth extracted, or they're just not able to chew as well. If you're giving treats, make sure that you're looking at the back of your bag and only giving the amount of treats. I've got a little bag of treats right here. Treats by, excuse me, is it pronounced Eucal? But they're by Smart Pack. And for example, you would give by hand as a treat or added to your horse's grain. Do they say how many? They don't, but there's no sugars added, so this is good. But usually it'll say something like feed 3 to 4 treats up to every 12 hours so that you're not overfeeding. But you don't want to free feed these treats. If you put them in a little feed dish, they're going to eat the entire thing. So you don't want to do that. And let's not overlook, it can lead to weight gain, especially if your horse is prone to obesity, if they're in a stall for a portion of their day or their dry lot's rather small, they don't get ridden. This can be a terrible idea to give horses treats if they're obese. You may want to look into 0 sugar treats or significantly reduced sugar treats that are on the market. There's a ton out there. But even still, you can overdo it with treats. Also worth noting, treats are not nutritionally balanced. So if you give too much, you might give too much selenium. Like if there's copper in the treats or something, you could give them double their daily allotment if you just give them half a bag of treats or whatever. So make sure that when you give treats, you read the back of the treat bag and see what the recommendations are. There's some treats that they say only give 1 a day, or some say 3 to 4 up to every 12 hours. Every horse is different. If you have a horse that has obesity issues, metabolic issues, insulin resistance, you might want to avoid treats altogether and instead use positive reinforcements like petting, scratching, that kind of thing. When you give horse treats, it can create expectations that they're always going to get treats. And when you suddenly stop and say, hey, we're not giving you treats all the time, it can make the horse frustrated and then they can get prancy and hot and dance around, which we've discussed can be pretty dangerous. And you don't want your horse to expect treats. Treats should be something that was kind of a surprise to them. Some horses also become treat dependent and refuse to do anything without being treated for it. I was really worried when I started teaching my horse Sersha that she needs to stand at the mounting block for me. And when she stood still and I got on and gave her a treat, that if I didn't give her a treat, she would get upset and frustrated. So I slowed down how many treats I was giving her. I realized, hey, this could be a bad situation where if she refuses to stand still for me or behave unless she's getting treats. So I started also saying, like, good girl, and give her a nice little scratch, and I wouldn't make her walk off immediately. In fact, a lot of times you don't want your horse to walk off immediately when you get in the saddle, because then they can get anticipatory and realize, like, hey, she's getting on and start walking before you've even gotten on your horse all the way. So I started saying, good girl. I would get on her and just let her sit there. And that was kind of her reward. So now I don't give her treats every time I get on her. And it's curbed that expectation frustration when the treats are not there for her. If you're going to try to reduce treats, given that you're replacing the treat with other positive reinforcements, such as verbal praise or scratches, that way you can eliminate the frustration when they don't get a treat, even though they're doing what you want. All this being said, if you do decide to treat your horse, how are you supposed to give them? I'm so glad you asked because this is super important. When you give treats to your horse, you should abide by the flat hand rule. That means that when you feed a horse, your fingers are straight and flat, like so, with the treat on the palm of your hand. Keep your thumb tucked so that your thumb doesn't accidentally slip inside the horse's mouth and potentially cause a biting hazard, because sometimes horses might think your thumb tastes pretty good and they might try to chomp on it thinking it's a treat. Horses love salt. Your hands are salty. You can see why this could be a problem. Let the horse scoop the treat out of the palm of your hand with its lips. Horses gather up food, including treats and grass and hay and grain, by hoovering it into their mouth using their lips. So if you keep your hand flat, steady with your thumb tucked, the horse's lips will just take up the treat and then chew it. If you just give your horse, like, let's say, I don't have anything smaller than this on my desk, but let's say this bottle of ink is a treat. I would want to feed it this way, extend it out to the horse and let the horse pick it up with its lips and eat it. Rather than if I try to go like this, the horse might then try to use its teeth to get the treat and potentially bite your fingers, and we don't want that. Make sure if you do give your horse treats that you're only giving treats when the correct behavior has been displayed. Reward the correct behavior only. So if your horse has an issue with standing still and they're finally standing still for you, you can go ahead and give them a treat. That would be appropriate. If they're staying out of your space, like backing up when you say back up, or if you shake your lead rope and they take a couple steps back, then you go to them to give them a treat. Make sure you don't reward pushiness. Avoid giving treats if the horse is crowding you, they nip, or nose your hand. Because at the end of the day, treats are reinforcing the behavior right before the treat was given. There's a method to treating horses called the single hand method. This means that you treat and release in one single motion. So if you have a treat and the horse eats it, you basically take your hand away once they have the treat. You don't linger, because then the horse might be trying to find extra treats and not finding them. So don't hover with your hand near their mouth after you've given them a take your hand away. Make sure that everyone who handles your horse handles them the way you handle them, and treats them only in situations which you would treat that horse as well. Because what can happen, let's say you don't allow your horse to pull their head down and eat grass while you're leading them from the barn to the arena. Let's say you don't allow that, but there's a handler there who does allow that. They will definitely do that behavior almost 100% of the time when that other person's handling them. And if you don't let them get away with it, horses are smart and they may not try it with you, but they'll be even more determined to try with the handler who does allow it, even if they don't allow it all the time. So just make sure that you're consistent and that consistency is across the board with anybody who handles your horse. When you're training your horse, small frequent sessions are beneficial because you're rewarding the exact behavior with a small reward. And that reinforces the correct response in your training session. Make sure when you're treating for training that you're using very tiny treats. I use treats that are in pellet form so that I can break them. So like one singular pellet, I can get like 5 or 6 little pieces out of it. And a lot of times they crumble it in the bag. So you have like a bunch of ready-made tiny little treats anyway. And if you're getting a low sugar one, very beneficial. So make sure that you're getting treats that were made specifically for horses with metabolic issues or treats specifically for training. Training treats tend to be given more frequently, and therefore the manufacturer is more likely to decrease the amount of sugar and additives in the treat. If you want to use treats for bonding purposes with your horse, given 1 to 3 treats per visit is plenty. You do not need to give your horse constant treats for bonding experiences. If your horse has metabolic issues or is insulin resistant, only feed low sugar treats. This can be hay pellets, ration balancer pellets, or even mint leaves. Make sure that even though they're low sugar treats, that you're still only giving tiny amounts. And for some of our equine friends, the vets will say, avoid treats entirely. This doesn't mean you don't reward your horse, you just don't reward them with something edible. Switch to occasional use only so that they learn that they don't get a treat every single time they do the tiniest little thing correctly. Try using scratches and verbal praise instead, and gradually decrease the amount of treats provided. This way you avoid the frustration and potential dangers associated with abruptly stopping treats. You might be wondering, well, Adri, what kind of treats should I give my horse? There's so many out there, it can be super overwhelming to try to navigate the treat aisle. So let's rank them from best/safest options. Hay pellets, low sugar treats, ration balancer pellets, carrot tops or tiny carrot pieces, thin apple slices, or peppermints in moderation are all good options for horse treats. Make sure that if you do use treats that you are using them carefully. A lot of commercial horse treats are very sugary and high in starch. Try giving something a little less sugary with a little more water content like banana, watermelons, or berries. Again, only in moderation. If your horse is insulin resistant or has Cushing disease, I would avoid treats altogether. Balls of sweet feed. Avoid treats that are heavy in molasses. The sugar content is going to be out of this world, and it's not good for your horse. Avoid feeding whole apples or whole carrots because that can pose a choking hazard. Anything sticky, you're probably going to want to avoid with your insulin resistant, Cushing horse, or other metabolic issues, because stickiness is usually indicative of it being bound with something sweet like honey or molasses. There are times you should avoid treats entirely. Horses that are aggressive around food, treats are not for them. They could injure themselves, other horses, or worse, you. It's not worth the risk. If your horse has a history of biting, treats are not for them. Don't encourage any kind of hand feeding of treats with horses that have a history of biting. If you really want to give your horse treats and they have a history of biting, consider giving it in a little food dish so that instead of them taking it directly from your hand and therefore potentially causing a bite injury, you give it to them in a safe dish so that your fingers are safe. If your horse is extremely pushy, do not give them treats. It just reinforces the pushiness and the crowding of your space. If your horse has metabolic issues or your vet says, no, do not give treats to your horse, please don't give treats to your horse. Reward them in other ways. If you have a beginner horse person around your horse, you might not want to have them give your horse treats by hand because they might not be giving the treats by hand in a safe way. Make sure you teach them the flat hand method and how to, in one sweeping motion, remove their hand once the treat has been taken. So the takeaway is giving treats is fine if done right. Use them for training, enrichment, and bonding. Avoid reinforcing bad behaviors, providing too much sugar, and feeding to horses with metabolic issues. Good rule of thumb, reward the behavior you want, ignore the behavior you don't want, and keep your fingers flat. All right, guys, that is everything you need to know about giving horses treats safely and responsibly. Remember, good manners make for happy horses and happy fingers. If you learned something today, hit that like button, subscribe, and join me next week for more hooves, humor, and heart. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.